Let's go. Kakadosh Boker Tov, or Erev Tov, better said. We are on Masechet Yevamot Daf Kaf Amud Aleph 25:8:1. The Gemara says, right, three different cases. The three different cases of the Gemara was actually very interesting because the Ritva actually explains that the three different cases actually came up, but they were all three asked in the Gemara, and therefore we wanted to find out what is the halacha. So what were the three cases exactly? The first case was, again, with a peddler. He's coming out of the guy's house, and the husband's coming home. So the hubby gets home, he comes inside, all of a sudden a peddler is leaving. And all of a sudden his wife is putting on her clothing, her trousers or underclothing. So the guy's thinking something's wrong here. You understand? So he comes and he wants to find out. What does he do? Says the Gemara, that's something which is mechoara davar tetzeh. What does that mean? She goes out from her husband. Why? Because that's considered the illicit relations. What's the peddler's leaving and this is what's going on here. That's case number one. Case number two, rok lemala minakila. What was the rok lemala minakila? Remember, in the olden days they used to phlegm a lot, and what happened was phlegm. You know what phlegm is? Spit. Yeah. Okay. Rok. So therefore, what happens is that if right now on top of this canopy, I think was the word in English, she said, if on top of the canopy was this phlegm, he's leaving, he's coming home, the peddler's leaving, and all of a sudden he comes and he sees that on top of the canopy, right, in his bed, there's a rock. So there's something wrong over here, right? What does that mean? Again, you're going to have a problem. So, that's it. That was the second case. Third case. What's the third case? Minalim hafuchim tahat hamita. What does that mean? Right? You had the shoes were upside down. What does that mean? Amar Rabbi, hoilu mechoara davar, the same thing. Tetzeh. Those are three different cases that happen. Again, one more time. The peddlers, every single one, it's always the peddler's fault. Yeah. But again, every single time it's a peddler leaving the house, the husband coming home, and this is the case. Okay, until
What's peddler?
That's how we start.
What's peddler?
Peddler. So says the Gemara, minalim afuchim lechze lemaninu. 1 second. Right now, if you find that the shoes are upside down, what was the purpose? Because they always used to keep the shoes underneath the bed. Right? It wasn't at the entrance of the house or in certain places. The shoes were always underneath the bed. So if it was going to be underneath the bed, so why don't you just check the shoes? About hockey, check the shoes. Check the shoes. What do you mean? Turn them upside down and check the shoes. That's all you have to do. So he comes and he says, Lichzi de Madinu, check who the shoes belong to. He says, no. Ela mekom minalim afuchim. Not that the shoes are upside down. What happened was, the guy is very, very smart. He doesn't want to get caught. So what happens? Even if somebody would walk into the room, his shoes are upside down, so nobody would realize that there's somebody else's shoes here. Like, hey, the husband's going to come home. He's going to say, hey, honey, why are there, whose shoes are these? They're not mine. Yeah, what's she going to tell him? No, I bought them for you, but they're already old and they're already, I don't know what. She can't start making up. So what? They used to turn them upside down. So that way that from far, nobody would realize until you must. You have to actually pick them up and check whose shoes they are. So says the Gemara, check whose shoes they are. I says, no, the place was different. Why? The man always used to put his shoes in one place. His wife would always put his shoes in her place. What happened is obviously this Rochel put his shoes in the wife's place. So what did the wife do? She put her shoes in her husband's place. So therefore the makom minalim were hafuchim, right? Which means that the place was different. Why was the place different? Because obviously the wife changed because of the Rochel. The Rochel didn't know where the shoes are kept. So he put his shoes in her place. She put her shoes in the husband's place. And now the husband comes and he sees, 1 second, why is my wife's shoes in my place? Right? There's something wrong here. Something's going on. So again, mechoara davar, and therefore, Amar Rabbi says that mechoara davar to say. He goes out. Okay, fine. Now, we just learned in this Braita that according to Rabbi, Betin forced the husband to divorce the wife, even al pi kol, even through a rumor. So even through a rumor, comes Rabbi and he says, you're going to come and divorce. So now since we come and we prohibit the woman to her husband because of the rumor, so kol sheken, we're going to prohibit the nitan. What was the nitan? The guy that was suspected of infidelity as well. Okay? So it comes out that the two braitot, which we're teaching above, is telling us that we force the guy to divorce the woman even without edim, right? Obviously, they are shitat Rebbe. However, though, according to Rav, in any place where Bet Din do not force a husband to divorce, they're never going to force him just for a rumor. A rumor is not enough. And therefore, even if they're going to come and they're not going to force him to divorce from the Nit'an as well, unless there's going to be, whether it's going to be testimony and so on and so forth. So says the Gemara, V'hilchata kivate de Rav, v'hilchata kivate de Rabbi. Halakha like Rav, and halakha like Rabbi. Now, obviously, the way that I just explained it to you, it can't be the halakha like both. Because according to Rav, he says we don't suspect for a rumor unless there's going to be witnesses. And according to Rabbi, we do suspect for rumors. So how do you tell me the halakha like Rav and the halakha like Rabbi? That's an oxymoron, right? It's a tarte de satre. It's a contradiction. You can't say that. Yeah? So says the Gemara, Kashya hilchata hilchata. It's a question, one halakha with another halakha. How could you tell me hilchata kavate de Rav and hilchata kavate de Rabbi? They're both conflicting. So says the Gemara, la kashya. It's not a question. Why is it not a question? Ha bekala de pasik, ha bekala de la pasik. It all depends whether it's a call which stops or a call which does not stop. What does that mean? The kala de pasik, right, is like pasek. Yeah? What does that mean? The call, the rumor is pasek, it stops. What does that mean? If right now, afterwards, there's a call that's machish, that goes against, that rejects the first call, and it says that it was sheket, so that's kala de pasik. Kala de lo pasik was, there was nothing. That means basically, there's a rumor, and everyone's just listening to the rumor, and the rumor is probably true, right? So kala de la pasik veleka edim, in a case where there's a call that's not stopping, but and even if there's not going to be a deem, we paskin like Rabbi that what? He has to divorce her. Why? It's a kala de lo pasik. There's no edim, doesn't matter, but it's a kala de lo pasik. Kala de pasik veika edim. But what happens if it's a call that stops, but there is witnesses, right? That's what we're saying, there's witnesses. Then we paskin like Rav, which is that he's obligated to divorce her. So that's the two different halachot. So now it makes sense, the hilchata. Meaning, it all depends whether it's kala de pasik or kala de lo pasik. If it's kala de pasik, right? If it's kala de pasik or not, that's the difference. What? Says the Gemara, v'kala de la pasik ad kama. What is a call de lo pasik? What does that mean? What is a call for how long? How long are we talking about now? Right? Amar Abaye. Abaye says, Amrali em. My mother told me, but it wasn't really his mother. It was right. It was the woman that brought him up. Because you're right, which is omenet in Hebrew, right? But it's a woman that brought him up. Why? Because the mother died, right, at birth, and therefore he had like a mother that she was the one that was taking care of him the entire time. So it says here, and he says like this, Dome de mata, right? Chashudei ha'ir, which means people that they come and they start speaking about people. It says is yoma upalga, yom v'chetzi. That's what it is, a day and a half. Okay, which means that if you're going to come and you're going to have a day and a half, right, that they're going to come and they're going to start speaking, that's already a kol she'eino posek. Yeah, 1 day and a half. We're not talking about months. We're not, mamash, a day and a half that people are just talking about it, that's already enough. You understand? Okay. So says the Gemara, Vela amra. Now, when do we say there was a day and a half? Ela de la pasak benu bene. When there was nothing in between, which means that what happens if it started for half a day and there was a call that was saying, no, it's false. And then it continued for another, no. Right? Why? Because if it's right now pasak, if it's going to be a hefsek between, also it doesn't help the day and a half. Aval pasak benu bene. But if there was a hefsek in between, even for a small amount of time, ha-pasak, it stopped. And therefore, even though there's going to come now, it's a kol sheni, right? The kol harishon was already batel, it was already annulled. Why? Because somebody came and said, no, it was false, right? So everything that you just said beforehand, was false. Vela amran, and we also didn't say this. Ela de la pasak mechamat ira. Only if it didn't stop because of fear. Aval pasak mechamat ira. But if it stopped because of fear, right? Mechamat irahu. Which means that because of fear it stopped and not because of any other reason. Which means, what is kol posek? Kol posek means not because you're afraid. For example, sometimes, right, you want to say something, but all of a sudden you're going to keep your mouth shut. Why are you going to keep your mouth shut? Not because it's not true, because you're afraid that the guy's going to come take vengeance. Right? You're afraid that something's going to happen.
He's the mayor or the tax collector.
Not only mayor or tax collector, many times it's people in power. Right? It could be people in power, says the Gemara. And also, what are we talking about? Teleka oivim. He doesn't have enemies. Right? Why? Aval ika oivim hu de'apkule lekala. If he's got enemies, it's the enemies that's taking up the call. What does that mean? Right? That means that he's going to come and he's going to say, you know why who's bringing up these rumors? It's my enemies, right? It's my worst friends and so on, right? Why? Because these guys are the ones that are taking out in order to put lichluch, in order to come and put dirt on me. So therefore he comes and he says, that's not called a kol. A kol has to come from people that is not the enemies, just people around, and that's it. Fine. Okay, now says the Gemara. Tzanan Hatam, we learned over there in the Mishnah in Gitin Memhe Amud Bet 45b. Says the Mishnah, Hamotzi et ishto mishum shemra lo yachzir. Imagine right now a person comes and he divorces his wife because of a shemra. What does that mean? It came out a rumor that she was cheating on him. So what happened? He went and he divorced her. So he shouldn't bring her back. That means even though afterwards it came out that it was false rumor, he shouldn't take her back in. Okay? Mishum neder, also lo yachzir. What happens right now, right, if she was making a lot of nedarim? So every 2, 4, 6, one neder, another end, swear. He kept on having going to the rabbi. Rabbi. He's already tired of it. He comes to the rabbi, he says, listen, I can't have this woman that every single 2, 4, 6, she's coming and she's swearing and doing vows. No, it's not for me. So what happened? He divorced her. Again, lo yachzir. Right? You're not allowed to take her back. Says the Gemara, Shalach le Rabbi bar Huna le Rabbi bar Nachman. Says Rabbi bar Huna to Rabbi bar Nachman, Yelamdenu Rabbenu. Our teacher, right, should he comes and he says, he asked it in Lashon of Hachna'ah. He was humbling himself in front of him. Okay? So he says, that's why we said that the Anava of Rabbi Huna, he says, look how Anavi was. He comes and he says, Yelamdenu Rabbenu. He says, Kanas ma'u sheyutziolo. Which means like this. What happens now? We just said that a person that divorced his wife because of a shemra, or he divorced his wife because she was an isha nadranit, which means she always used to make nedarim. So lo yachzir. What does that mean? He shouldn't take her back. What happens if he didn't take her back? What's halacha? Do we force him to get divorced or not? Yes. Right? So Elmaleh comes and he says, Tanina. We learned it already. Where do we learn it? In a Mishnah. How do you know it's a Mishnah? Because we said Tanina. Tanina is 2 nuns. Remember, Tanina is with Mishnah, right? It's none, right? So he says, right, the Tanina, because we learned in the Mishnah, Hanitan al eshet ish vehotziuha mitachat yado, af al pi shenichna shekanas yotzi. We already learned if a person right now was suspected of going with a married woman, and then the bedin came and they took her out, right? Mitachat yado, which means they forced the husband to divorce her. Af al pi shekanas. Even though the one that was rumored or going around with her, he comes and he gets married to her, what happens? Yotzi, right? They force him to divorce her. So therefore, in this case, what is the reason why the nitan? Why is it that he's not allowed to get married? Why is it that the nitan is not allowed to come? Which means, again, why is it that the guy is not allowed to come to get married? Because he says that the first call was true. So therefore, that he actually had relations with her. So if so, the same thing. If somebody comes and he divorces his wife because of Shemra, it means the Chachamim went and he said that he can't get married to her. Why? Because that means that the fact that he divorced her, it was a good call. It was a good voice. It was a good rumor. So because of that, we're going to say the same halakha. You can't get her married. Elmaleh comes and he says, Midami. Can you compare both cases? Hatam hotziuha. There, it was the bedin that caused him to divorce. Vehacha hotzia. Here, the guy divorced on his own accord. Nobody forced him to divorce. He divorced because he thought, he didn't want to be living with a woman that she's got rumors going around. But then afterwards, once the rumors subsided, and then it's all false, fine. He'll get married to her again. What's the problem? Right? But here, Bedin are forcing him to get divorced. So, according to the Shita Rabbi bar Nachman, right, it was actually written Hotzia. So since it was written Hotzia and not Hotziuha, there was no difference between the Bedin and it was the exact same case. There's no difference, right? So says the Gemara, Takati midami, is it still compared, right? Hacha habaal, hatam haboel. In our Mishnah, it's the boel. In our Mishnah, it's the one that's suspected of sleeping with her, right? Of going with the eshetish. He's the one that's marrying her afterwards. So it's the boel. There, in that case, it was the husband. The husband when he divorced his wife, and then afterwards he's going to take her again. But it's the husband, it's a baal. There's no boel. So Elmaleh comes and he says, Shapir dami adade. No. They still are compared to each other. Why are they compared to each other? Here it was the rabbis that made a gezerah. that you shouldn't get married to her lechatchila. But if you did get married to her, so still you have to get divorced. Hachanami, so too. And Masechet Gitin, the same halacha. The rabbis say, lo yachsid, don't get divorced. But in kanas, if you did get married, yotzi, right? So which means that here we're trying to say, one second, I don't care about if it's the husband or the guy that's suspected of living with this married woman. At the end of the day, it's the same halacha. Rabbis say lechatchila, can you take her back? No. Now what happens if you already did do it? The rabbi should say the right to take her out. So same thing here, the rabbi should take it out. It says lohi, but it's not true. Why? Alume al melekala hatam. So over there in the Mishnah, which is in our Mishnah, right? Alume al melekala, right? What happened is that he was actually making the call was actually true, and therefore we come and we divorce him, right? Why? So that way people should not come and say that what? That Be'emet it was true. What does that mean? Imagine right now, you have a guy that everyone's saying that he's sleeping around with a married woman. The Betin come and they divorce her. Even if the husband divorced, doesn't matter what happened, she gets divorced. And now that guy goes live with her. Even if it wasn't true, what are people going to say? That it must be true. What's the proof? He just went and he got married to her. That's the biggest proof. There's no bigger proof than that, which means he's strengthening the call. He is alume al-mekala. He is making the call even stronger. The boel. Hacha, but by here, Masechet Gitin, where it's the husband, Amrinan, we're saying, Kambe bekala velete. The husband looked into it a little bit more, right? He was calmed down afterwards, right? Remember, right? You never do things when you're very, how do you call it? Yeah, no. Yeah, when you're very nervous, when you're upset, when you're angry, you wait, you calm. This husband, right, like a good Moroccan, right, phosphor, right? He was like a match, boom, right? And what happened? Right away, divorced her. Yeah, I use it. Shechita, no, this Shechita, you won't be able to take her back. Yeah, so what happened? Divorce her. After 10 minutes, he comes and he says, you know what? 1 second. Let me check. Right? Let me check. Right? And then what happened? He realized, no. So therefore he wanted. He took her back. So it's a difference between the two different cases. At all. Exactly. Okay, very good. Says the Mishnah. There's a very interesting halacha. Okay, very interesting until where the rabbis thought. Listen carefully. Hameri get mimdinat hayam ve'amar befanai nichtav, fanai nichtav. Imagine right now somebody comes from Medinat Hayam, right? Medinat Hayam is diaspora. So he comes from outside of Eretz Yisrael, and he comes to Israel, and he says, "Befanai nichtav, fanai nichtav," which means this get was written and signed in front of me. So lo yisa et ishto. He cannot come and get married to the guy's wife, right? Why? Right? Because then we're going to say, 1 second, maybe he fabricated it, right? He fabricated the entire case in order for what? To get married to the woman, right? So he comes. He says, rabbis, look, the husband went and he wrote a get. Here's the get. Look, right? So you're getting divorced. This woman, Mrs. Yeah. The next day he comes to get married. Oh, no.
He's a biased witness.
Yeah, very good. He can never get married to her. You heard? He can never get married to her. Okay. Yeah. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah, met. What happens if the guy testifies that he died? Or haraktiv, I killed him. Or haragnuhu, they killed him, right? Or we or it was killed, whichever one we're going to see now. Lo yisat ishto, the same halacha. If the guy comes back and he says, by the way, right, we were just in the war in Ukraine and the husband died, or I went and I actually killed him, or he was killed, whether it's we killed him or that he was killed, again, same halacha. You're not allowed to get married to the wife. Why? Because here's the same thing. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda argues and he says, no, 1 second. Rabbi Yehuda says, Lo tinase ishto, right? Asul ishto linase klal. Why? If right now he comes and he says, I killed him, she's not allowed to get married at all. Why? We're going to see in the Mishnah and the Gemara, because basically we don't accept the testimony. Because imagine right now I come to Bedin and I say I killed someone. Do they accept it? No, they don't accept it, right? Because you and Adam Masim Tatzmor Rasha. Right? That's a very big difference between our court system, right, and the other court system. The other court system, the guy comes and he says, I killed, you never touch. They could do DNA tests. They could check that you were on the other side of the world. You just said the words, I killed, they could come and they could use it against you. Why? You said it. Well, you said it, but it's proven. In every single way, it was proven that it's false. Doesn't matter. That's the way it is, right? But by us, doesn't help. A guy comes, he says, I killed this person, it's still not enough. If there's no witnesses, it's not enough. So we don't even accept the testimony. So she's not allowed to get married at all. Says Haragnu, but if they said that we killed him or he was killed, whatever we're going to see now in the Gemara, Tina Seishto, his wife could get married. So now we're going to explain in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Tamad Minatayam Da'aleka Samchinan. What was the entire reason that we said? Because he came with a get from the diaspora. And since he came from the get from the diaspora, he was obligated to say, so since the entire get is based upon his testimony, because he said, because that's what you have to say when you bring it from the diaspora. So that we're relying upon him, all right? So therefore, it's going to be problematic, which means we're not going to believe, he's not allowed to come and get married to the wife. But what happens if the guy came from one part of Israel to another part of Israel, and he brings the get? And it says over there, we don't even rely on it. Why? He's just a courier, right? He could be a monkey bringing the how do you call it, the mail. I don't care. So what happens? He's allowed to get married to the wife. Why? I'm not relying on him. So if I'm not relying on him, you could get married to the wife, no problem. Ask the Gemara v'hamet te'lavaleka samchina. But when I come and I say that he died, right? It says over there, they're not really being somech on him. Why are they not being somech on him? The Amar More says, Isha daika u'mintzeva. Isha medayeket, she's daika. She comes and she investigates very, very well, and only then is she going to get married. Why? There's an incredible leniency, right? But the rabbis did to do with a woman that she shouldn't be an aguna. What was the leniency? If right now there's a woman that one witness comes and says that the husband died. So usually, right, we don't believe one witness. How many witnesses you always need?
Two.
You need two witnesses. Here we are going to rely on one witness. Why? The rabbis were lenient of Isha Daika U'Mitzvah. What does that mean? Before she's ever going to get married, she's going to investigate very, very well whether Be'emet it was true or not. You know why? Because if right now she gets married, then what happens?
Can she be the witness?
No, she herself no. Right? There's a question about another woman, but not she herself no. So why? Because number one, right, what happens is that the children are mamzerim. Number two, right, she cannot get married to either husband, meaning she has to leave both husbands. She loses the ketubah from each husband, and she loses out on each husband. That means she can't stay married to the first husband because she already went to the second husband, and she has to leave the second husband because it was done by Yisur, so she can't even stay. So she leaves both husbands, children are mamzerim, loses the ketubah. So before a woman is going to put herself into such a mud, right, she's going to check, make sure that 100% there's no monkey business here going on. Isha daika mitzvah uktani, and we came, right, and we learned lo yisat ishto, that you still can't get married to the wife, right? So now 1 second. So you see from here that even though we're not relying on him, we're relying on her because Isha daika mitzvah. Still, right, he's not allowed to get married to the wife. So says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Hatam lekaktava, hacha ikaktava. Here, when the person is coming with a get from Israel, you have the ktav, you have the piece of paper. The piece of paper is already everything. Here, there's no piece of paper. It's testimony of your mouth. You're coming here saying, the guy died. That's your testimony. The piece of paper is everything. I don't need anybody to say anything, especially if it's in Israel. So the Tzram, as we learned in the Mishnah, okay, the Mishnah says, Ma ben get lemita. What is the difference between a get, right, the edut of a testimony of a get, of a divorce, and the testimony of a mita of death? He says, Shaktav mochiach. The writing. One is unwritten on paper. I don't need to do anything. It's like you have a document. The document in itself is everything. I don't need testimony. You have a document. The other one, you need testimony. There's a big difference. Okay? Fine.
What is it the Mishnah is saying without it?
As the Mishnah, the two dots, metaraktiv aragnuhu lo yisat ishto. So he said, if right now an ed comes in, a witness comes in, and he says, the husband died, or I killed the husband, or he was killed, or we killed him, lo yisat ishto, he's not allowed to get married to the wife. Who nihu de lo yisat ishto? Right? It's mashma that only he cannot get married to the wife. But acher, somebody else is going to be permitted. Ve'amar Rav Yosef comes and he says, for 1 second, Ploni reva'ani leonsi. Right? It says, Hu ve'acher mitzarfin leorgo. Imagine right now somebody comes into Bedi and he says, Mr. Joe Schmo, Mr. X over here, he went and he violated me against my will. Now, obviously, we're talking about man to a man, right? Reva'ani, right? He went and he violated him against his own will. Leonsi was an honest. So it says, Hu ve'acher mitzarfin lehorgo. Here, which is something very interesting, the defendant, right, which is, again, one more time, the defendant and somebody else, they combine to kill the guy. The defendant and someone else could combine to kill the guy. What happens though if he comes to the
victim,
Bedin?
not the defendant.
The victim.
Not the defendant.
Sorry. The victim, the one that was being done to. Right. Okay. Yeah. So is the victim. You're right. I apologize. Right. So what happens now? Lirtsoni. Right. What does it mean? Lirtsoni. That means the guy went and he said, yeah, but he was doing it willingly. He wanted to do it. So now he comes and he says, Rashahu. He's a Rasha. The Torah says, Al tashet yadecha imra shaliyot il Hamas. You can't do it. Which means once he went and he said that this guy had relations with him, but he said that it was done willingly, so now he made himself into a Rasha. Once he's a Rasha, he's a Pasul Ed. If he's a Pasul Ed, it doesn't help. He's already a Rasha. If nothing's going to help him. So the Gemara says, 1 second. If you're going to tell me now, right now, basically what's happening is that why are you believing the testimony of the guy? The second that the guy comes and he says, whether it's going to be Araktiv or whatever it is that he's saying, 1 second, you shouldn't believe him at all. He's making himself into a Rasha. Right? What we're trying to say is that you're making yourself into a Rasha. Because here you're coming, you're saying, I killed him. Or you're coming and say, we killed him. The second that you say, I killed him or we killed him, you're a Rasha. You think I'm going to accept your testimony? Obviously not. Just like the case over here, Ploni Rebani. So the Gemara says, maybe I'm going to say, you know what? Here, it was the leniency. Why? Eduti Shah, we don't want her to stay in a hula her entire life. So imagine this guy, right? He was a very good guy. He said he killed him, he murdered him, but at least he didn't want the woman should stay for a hula forever. So he comes and he says, by the way, I went and I killed him. Yeah, he's a good guy. So says the Gemara, maybe you're going to say that because of Eduti Shah, Akilu Barabanan. The Amar of Menashe says of Menashe, Kafeh Mubet, Gazlan de Divrehem Kasher Eduti Shah. Gazlan de Divre Torah Pasul Eduti Shah. Somebody that's considered a Gazlan, according to Divrehem, according to the rabbis, he's still kasher le'edut isha. If he's considered a gazlan for Divrei Torah, he's pasul le'edut isha, which means that even though the rabbis were more lenient to do with edut isha, that's only to do with psulim d'rabbanan, not psulim d'oraita. Here it's a psul d'oraita. If the guy went and he killed, it's not a d'rabbanan, it's a d'oraita. So therefore, anything of d'oraita, it's still going to be pasul. So what are you talking about? So says the Gemara, okay, fine. So Neymar Rav Menashe, the Amar Rav Yehuda. Why don't we say that Rav Menashe paskins like Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, that he says that the woman is prohibited to get married, but not according to Chachamim. Remember, in our Mishnah there was a machloket. Okay, what was a machloket? It said Hamavi gem imdinat lo yisat ishto, met haragdeh lo yisat ishto. Rabbi Yehuda omer haraktiv lo tinaseh ishto at all. He's not allowed to get married at all. But the first one, Chachamim were arguing on Rabbi Yehuda. So why don't we say Rabbi Menashe holds like Rabbi Yehuda? Elmaleh Rabbi Menashe says Rabbi Menashe no. I could even hold like Rabbanan. Why? What is the reasoning why the rabbis came and they said that they're not going to posel somebody that says that he killed the husband? Kiderava, like Rava. Amar Rava, but Rava says, Adam karov etzel atzmo. A person is biased to himself. He's like a family member to himself. And therefore he cannot testify on himself. Just like a pasul, right? He cannot, he's pasul to himself, so he can't testify about himself.
You can't say that,
and therefore, exactly. So therefore, he can. So because of that, even though Bedin are not going to accept to do with him, they're going to accept it to do with the Rovea, to do with Palgina Dibura. Palgina Dibura means I split your words. I'm going to believe that which happened, but I'm not going to believe that it happened with you and it was with your consent. So the same thing. I'm going to believe that this happened, right? That the guy's dead, but I'm not going to believe that you killed him. Why? Palgina Dibura. I split the words I split it. And now I'm believing half, but I'm not believing the full story. Okay, so that's the case of Rav Menashe that he goes even according to Rabbanan. So says the Gemara, why don't I say then Rav Yosef that he says that we do not accept the testimony of the victim, right, of the violation case, right, that he did it willingly. The Amar Rav Yehuda, that he holds like Rav Yehuda. So he says, Elmaleh Rav Yosef says Rav Yosef, Ana de'ami afilu Rabbanan. I hold also like Rabbanan. Shane edut isha de'akilu Rabbanan. Edut isha is special because the rabbis were lenient to do with edut isha. So he says, Rav Menashe de'amar, and Rav Menashe is going to come and he's going to say, like Rabbi Yehuda. So he comes and he says that he holds, right, like him in the Mishnah, that we're not going to accept the testimony of a isha from an Ed Pasul min Torah. Okay, nekuda. Okay, next 2 dots. Haraktiv, haragnuhu tinaseh. So he said, if he says haraktiv, I killed him, or we killed him, right, she could get married. Maishna haraktiv, what's the difference between I killed him or we killed him? What's the difference? So Rav Yudah says, Be'omer ani hayiti morgav. It doesn't mean, haragti means I killed him. When it says haragnuhu, it means I saw that he was killed. But it wasn't that I had my blood, meaning I didn't do it physically. I was around the area. I was there. We were there. Okay? Ask the Gemara, Tanya. Sorry, this is not a question. There's a proof, right? Tanya. So he says, how do we know this? Tanya, because we learned, right? Amrulo Rabbi Yehuda Maaseh b'listim echad sheyatza le'areg b'mziga kaput kaya. Amar lehem lechu ve'amru le'eshet Shimon ben Kohen ani harakti et ba'ala b'knisati lelod. So what happened is that they told Chachamim to Rabbi Yehuda, there was a story of a listim echad. And we understand a listim echad, the thief, that he went and he was being taken out to be killed. And he went and he told the people that are beside him, go tell the wife of Shimon ben Kohen, right? So you guys go, tell the wife of Shimon ben Kohen, right? I killed her husband in the entrance of Lod. Ve'amrila, and some people say, I killed the husband when he came into Lod. Okay? Biknisato lelod, not what I came into Lod, but when he came into Lod. They see what ishto, they went and they got the wife married. So says the Gemara, Amar lahem, he told them, Misham Raya, from there's a proof, right? Be'omer ani hayiti morgav. It wasn't that he went and he said, I killed him. I was with the people that killed him. It's not that I killed him. I killed him, you're not going to be believed. But I was with the people that killed him. So says the Gemara, but he was called listim. The Gemara said, Maaseh b'listim echad. He was a thief. He used to do that. No, nitpas ali de listiot. He was caught through the listiot. What does that mean? That he was caught with the bandits. So says the Gemara, yeah, but he was being taken out to be killed. He says, no. It was a bedin of the goyim. They don't care and they come and they just kill him. They weren't checking. He was around the area. Boom. They give him a coat and they just kill him. That's all that they wanted to do. Okay? Imagine right now, a woman, she made a neder. And the rabbi was not able to get her out of the neder. So therefore, the rabbi went and divorced her from her husband. So the rabbi, the rabbi cannot marry her off. Get married to her. Sorry, that's another word saying. Right? So the rabbi cannot get married to her. Why? Because he wasn't able to find a heter, so get her to be with the husband. So now, right, we don't want to do that. However, though, what happens if she went and she did miyun? Remember, miyun is that she renounces the marriage. She got married through the mother or brother, and now she renounces the marriage once she becomes a mitzvah, or she did chalitza in front of him. He's saying she's allowed to go. Why? Because it's a bedin. Says the Gemara, ha'hitira. What happens if the rabbi came and he did permit her? So he's saying, so what happens if the rabbi permitted her and then she got divorced? So then he could get married to her. But what are we dealing with? If we're going to talk about that it's going to be with one person, which means that the woman is coming in front of one rabbi, can one rabbi permit a neder? You always need three for atarat nedarim. Now what? If there's going to be three people, you're going to suspect all three? So you have three rabbis here. You're going to suspect all three rabbis. You're not going to suspect all three rabbis. But now we learned in the Mishnah, in the Shubadim, we just said in the Sefer of the Mishnah that you're going to believe him. Why? Because it's a bedin, and a bedin I'm not going to suspect. So says the Gemara, no, you're right. Leolam bechad, really we're talking about one witness. Says Yachid mumche. We're talking about one Yachid that he's an expert. And a Yachid mumche, he could do it by himself. So the same thing, Hachanami bi Yachid mumche, we're talking about that she came with a neder in front of the rabbi, and he was a Yachid mumche, and therefore we're going to suspect it. So because of that, the rabbi cannot come and get married to her. If right now this woman did miyun or chalitza in front of the rabbis, so then she is allowed to get married to one of the rabbis. Tamad bedin, right? The reason why is because of bedin. Habetrei, but what happens if it was only done in front of two people? No, she cannot. Why? That means even though they didn't do anything, she cannot get married to one of them. So what's the difference between that which we learned in the Mishnah? We learned in the Mishnah, there's a Tosefta. It says, Edim chatumim al sedeh mekach. If you have witnesses which are signed on a sedeh mekach, on a document which is a sale document, they'll get isha or a get of a woman. Lo chashu chachamim ledvar zeh. They didn't come and they didn't suspect to anything, right? Why? He says, so you see from here that even in this case, even if there was going to be mi'un or chalitza, which is going to be done in front of two dayanim, right? We're not going to suspect for this. So therefore, why is the Mishnah? What? We're not going to suspect that these two rabbis are in on it in order to get her divorced or in order to do something, in order to afterwards go and to get married to her. So therefore, you see that even without a bedin, right? You don't need a bedin. It's only that it's not one person. One person you could suspect, but if it's going to be two people, you're not going to suspect. So says Gemara, he gufa kamash malan. That in itself is what is coming to teach us. This comes to exclude that which we learned in a Braita, where it says there's a man da'amar, right, which is Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yudav, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yosef, that they come and they say miyun bifnei shnayim. They hold that miyun could be done even in front of two people. Kamash Maran comes teach you miyun bifnei shlosha. That miyun has to be done in front of three people, not two people, three people. Okay, nekuda next. So now the rabbis are going to come. They're going to ask the following question: Kanas ma'u yotzi. What happens if the rabbi or the shaliach, he came and he actually got married to her? So we just said the rabbi that's divorcing the woman, or the witness which is signed on the document, or v'chule, they cannot come and get married to the woman. What happens if they actually did get married to the woman? What's the halacha? So says the Gemara, do we take her out or not? So Rav Kahana says kanas motzi, right? If they got married to her, they take her out. Vashi amar kanas eno motzi. So Tani Lehud of Zut the of Papi, Kedivrei Omer kanas eno motzi. So they taught in the academy of the Bet Midrash of the Papi, like that if they got married, they don't take them out. So Amri le Rabbanan le Ravashi, says the Rabbanan to the Ravashi, Gemara or Svara? Is it a Gemara or is it a Svara? Gemara means a tradition. Right? Gemara Gemirale, we learned it as a tradition. That's it. No reasoning. You accept it, Gemarnu. Or is it a logic? I want to know, what is it? Is it a logic or is it Gemara? So says the Gemara, Amar lehu, he says, Matnitini. It's a Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Anitam yashivcha, v'nishtachrera, o me'avadek hachavim nizgaira. We just said that if somebody's going and fooling around with a goya or fooling around with a shivcha, and then what happens is he wants to get married to them, which means that the shivcha was free, the shivcha kanani was free, or the goya she converted, and now he wants to get married to them. What do we say? We said they're not allowed to. Lo yichnos. Vavim kanas. What happens if he did actually get married to them? And motzi, we don't force him to divorce. Almas, we see from here, birnana lo mapkinan. We do not force a person to divorce because of a laws, meaning because of some things that are
that goes against when we first started.
Very good. Hachanami, so to here, right? The reason why is because it says Shalom. It says over here, even though the Mishnah above said to do with anitan al eshet ish, yes. So he says there it's a little bit different because there, right, it's actually much more meguneh to do with the married woman, right? But here it says birnana lo mapkina. What does that mean? When they talk about birnana, we're not going to come and we're not going to take them out. Okay, and therefore we're going to stop over here. Continue with